The stars looked different from the bridge of the Prometheus. Minho stood at the observation window, watching the endless black space filled with tiny points of light. Each one was a sun, perhaps with planets circling it. Somewhere out there, intelligent life had been watching humanity for years, waiting to see if these newcomers were worthy of contact. Now that contact was happening, and Minho was responsible for making it work. "We'll arrive at Valtros Prime in 6 hours," Captain Hyun said from behind him. The captain was a tall woman with gray streaks in her black hair. She had commanded military vessels for 20 years before taking charge of Earth's first diplomatic ship. "Are you ready for this?" Minho turned from the window and smiled, though he felt nervous energy in his stomach. "As ready as I'll ever be. We've prepared for 2 years. Every word of the Draxian language memorized, every custom studied, every protocol reviewed 1,000 times." "That's not what I asked." Hyun walked closer, her expression serious. "I asked if you're ready, because once we're in their space, we're at their mercy. The Draxian Empire has ruled this part of the galaxy for 10,000 years. They don't see us as equals. Then we'll change their minds," Minho said with confidence he didn't quite feel. "That's what diplomacy is for." Behind them, the bridge door opened, and Jiwon entered. She was younger than Minho by 5 years, but her eyes held the hardness of someone who had seen combat. As his bodyguard and intelligence officer, she had read every report about the Draxians that Earth's spies could gather. "The crew is talking," Jiwon said quietly. "They're scared. Half of them think the Draxians will kill us the moment we arrive." "The Draxians invited us," Minho reminded her. "They want to meet us, that's a good sign." "They invited us like someone invites an interesting insect into their home," Jiwon replied. "To study it. Maybe to step on it if it becomes annoying." She crossed her arms. "I've read the reports, Minho. Every species the Draxians have contacted has either submitted to their rule or been destroyed. There's no third option in their worldview." "Then we'll create a third option," Minho said firmly. "Humanity didn't come this far to bow to anyone, but we also don't want war. There has to be a middle path." Hyun shook her head slowly. "I hope you're right. For all our sakes." The hours passed slowly. Minho reviewed his prepared speeches again, though he had them memorized perfectly. He thought about Earth, about the billions of people depending on this mission. First contact with an alien civilization was supposed to be humanity's greatest moment. Instead, it felt like walking into a courtroom where the judge had already decided the verdict. When the Prometheus finally dropped out of faster-than-light travel, the sight before them made everyone on the bridge fall silent. Valtros Prime hung in space like a jewel. The planet was larger than Earth, covered in cities that glowed with artificial light even on the day side. Massive orbital stations surrounded it, each one bigger than any human structure. Hundreds of ships moved between the planet and its 3 moons, creating a traffic pattern that made Earth's busiest spaceports look empty by comparison. "This is Draxian Central Command," a voice spoke in their communication system. The translator converted the alien words into English, but the tone of superiority needed no translation. "Human vessel Prometheus, you will follow the designated flight path. Any deviation will result in your immediate destruction." "Friendly," Jiwon muttered. Hyun sent their acknowledgement, and the Prometheus followed the path marked on their navigation system. As they descended toward the planet, escort ships appeared around them. The Draxian vessels were sleek and dangerous-looking, covered in weapons that tracked the human ship with obvious menace. The escort brought them to a landing platform in the capital city. Through the windows, Minho could see buildings that reached toward the sky like mountains of metal and glass. Everything was enormous, built for a species that stood 8 feet tall with thick, scaled bodies. "Remember," Minho said to his small team as they prepared to disembark, "we represent all of humanity. Every word we speak, every action we take, will be remembered forever." The landing ramp extended, and Minho led his delegation down onto alien soil for the first time. The air was thicker than Earth's and smelled strange, hot, metallic. A group of Draxians waited for them. They were reptilian, with scales that shimmered in shades of green and blue. Their eyes were large and golden, with vertical pupils that watched the humans with cold interest. They wore elaborate robes marked with symbols that Minho's training helped him recognize as ranks and honors. The lead Draxian stepped forward. When he spoke, his teeth showed, sharp and predatory. "I am Ambassador Velkoth. You will follow me to your quarters. Tomorrow, if the Emperor wishes it, you may be granted an audience." "If he wishes it?" Minho asked carefully. "We were invited here to negotiate a treaty." "You were invited here because the Emperor was curious about your species," Velkoth replied. His tone made clear what he thought of that curiosity. Whether negotiations occur depends entirely on whether you prove interesting enough to bother with. They were led through the city in a transport that felt more like a prison convoy than a diplomatic escort. Draxians lined the streets, watching the humans pass with expressions that ranged from curiosity to contempt. Some pointed and made sounds that the translators interpreted as laughter. "They're mocking us," Jiwan whispered to Minho. "Let them." Minho replied quietly, "Words don't hurt us. We're here for peace, not to win a popularity contest." But that night, in the quarters assigned to the human delegation, Minho stood at another window and looked up at the alien stars. He thought about Jiwan's warnings and Hyun's concerns. He thought about the cold dismissal in Ambassador Velkoth's voice and the mockery in the streets. Maybe they had made a mistake. Maybe humanity should have waited longer, built more ships, grown stronger before making contact. Maybe peace wasn't possible with a civilization that viewed itself as superior to all others, but it was too late for doubts now. Tomorrow he would meet the Emperor. Tomorrow he would speak for Earth and all humanity. Tomorrow he would try to build a bridge between civilizations despite the vast gulf between them. Tomorrow would decide humanity's future. Minho just hoped he was strong enough to bear that weight. He touched the small photo he carried in his pocket, an image of Earth taken from space, that famous blue marble floating in the darkness. That was what he was fighting for. Not glory, not power, but the simple hope that humans could live in this vast universe without bowing to tyrants or becoming tyrants themselves. He would find a way. He had to. Outside, the alien city hummed with life under strange stars, and Minho prepared himself for the most important day of his life. The summons came at dawn by human reckoning, though Valtros Prime's day cycle was longer than Earth's. A squad of Imperial guards arrived at their quarters, their ceremonial armor polished to a mirror shine. The lead guard spoke in the formal Draxian dialect reserved for palace announcements. "The Emperor has decided to grant you audience. You will come now." Minho dressed quickly in his formal diplomatic uniform. The dark blue fabric bore Earth's symbol, a simple globe surrounded by olive branches. He had chosen it carefully, hoping the message of peace would be clear. Jiwan stood ready beside him, wearing her own formal attire but with eyes that constantly scanned for threats. "Stay close to me," she said quietly, as they followed the guards through the palace corridors. The Imperial Palace was beyond massive. Halls stretched for hundreds of meters, their ceilings so high they disappeared into shadow. Carved pillars showed scenes of Draxian conquest across thousands of worlds. Every image showed the same story: mighty Draxian warriors standing over defeated aliens, forcing them to kneel. Minho tried not to think about what those images meant. The throne room doors stood 50 feet tall, made of some dark metal covered in more carvings. As the guards pushed them open, a sound like thunder echoed through the chamber. Inside, hundreds of Draxian nobles stood in rows on either side of a long walkway. All of them turned to watch as the humans entered. The throne sat at the far end, elevated on a platform that required the humans to walk up 30 steps. It was carved from a single piece of black stone embedded with crystals that pulsed with inner light. And sitting upon it was Emperor Thalvrax IV. He was ancient. Even by Draxian standards, which measured lifetimes in centuries, the Emperor was old. His scales had faded to a pale gray, and scars marked his face and arms. Decorations of battles fought long before humans had left their home planet. But his golden eyes were sharp and aware, missing nothing. Beside him stood a smaller Draxian in elaborate robes marked with the symbols of highest rank. This was Chancellor Krevthon, according to Minho's briefing materials. The Emperor's chief, advisor and rumored to be the true power behind many imperial decisions. Minho climbed the steps slowly, maintaining his dignity despite the hostile stares from every direction. When he reached the appropriate distance, 10 feet from the throne, he stopped and bowed from the waist, the formal gesture of respect between equals. He did not kneel. A murmur ran through the assembled nobles. Several made sounds of outrage. Chancellor Krevthon's eyes narrowed, and he leaned close to whisper something to the Emperor. "You are Minho, representative of the species called humans," the Emperor said. His voice was deep and resonant, carrying easily through the vast chamber. "I am, Your Imperial Majesty," Minho replied in fluent Draxian. "I come bearing greetings from Earth and hopes for peaceful relations between our civilizations." "Peaceful relations," the Emperor repeated as if testing the words. "You speak our language adequately. That shows some intelligence at least. Tell us, small creature, what does your species offer the Empire?" Minho had prepared for this moment. He began his carefully rehearsed speech, explaining humanity's technological advances, their rich cultural heritage, their willingness to share knowledge and establish trade routes. He spoke of mutual benefit, of the advantages that came from diversity of thought, of how cooperation between species enriched all involved. The Emperor listened without expression. The nobles whispered among themselves, but Minho couldn't tell if their reactions were positive or negative. When he finished, silence filled the throne room. Finally, the Emperor spoke. "You speak well for a primitive. Your words are pretty, like the songs of small birds." He leaned forward on his throne. "But the Empire has no need of songs from birds. We are the masters of this galaxy. We have been so for 10,000 years. We will be so for 10,000 more." "Your Majesty," Minho said carefully, "humanity seeks not to challenge the Empire's greatness, but to exist alongside it as friends and partners." "Friends." Chancellor Krevthon spoke for the first time, his voice oily and smooth. "Partners. Such interesting words. Tell me, human, do you consider yourself a partner to the insects in your garden? Or a master who tolerates their presence, as long as they serve a purpose?" Minho felt his pulse quicken. This was going wrong, but he had to stay calm. "We believe that intelligence makes all beings worthy of respect, regardless of their origin or current level of technology." "Worthy of respect," the Emperor mused. "How generous of you to grant us your respect." His tone turned cold. "I will tell you what the Empire offers your species. You may join us as subjects. You will pay tribute in resources and labor. You will follow imperial law in all things. You will acknowledge Draxian supremacy. In exchange, we will allow you to continue existing." The ultimatum hung in the air like poison gas. Minho felt Jiwan tense beside him. "Your Majesty," Minho said slowly, choosing each word with care, "humanity is honored by your attention, but we cannot accept subjugation. We are a free people. We seek cooperation between equals, not the dominion of one over another." The whispers among the nobles grew louder. Chancellor Krevthon smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Equals." The Emperor's voice rose. "You dare speak of equality? Your species discovered faster than light travel mere decades ago. We had mastered it before your world had produced its first civilization. You are children playing with tools you barely understand, presuming to negotiate with gods." "We are not children," Minho replied, his own voice steady despite the fear growing in his chest. "We are a sovereign people. We offer friendship freely given, not obedience extracted by threats." Chancellor Krevthon leaned close to the Emperor again, whispering urgently. Minho caught fragments. "Dangerous precedent. Other subject species. Cannot allow defiance." The Emperor's eyes fixed on Minho with sudden intensity. "You refuse the Empire's generous offer?" "I cannot accept terms that would make my people slaves," Minho said. "But I hope we can find other terms acceptable to both our civilizations." There are no other terms. The Emperor rose from his throne, his massive form towering over the humans. For 10,000 years, every species we have encountered has accepted one of two fates: submission or destruction. You, tiny creature, who has lived perhaps 30 of your short years, think you can create a third option? I think that wisdom lies in recognizing when old ways no longer serve, Minho replied. He knew he was pushing too far, but there was no retreat now. I think that true strength allows for cooperation, not just conquest. The throne room fell absolutely silent. The Emperor stared down at Minho for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice terrible in its calmness. You insult me. You insult the Empire. You insult 10,000 years of tradition and order. He turned to his guards. This creature has committed the gravest offense possible. It has contradicted the Emperor in open court. The punishment is death. No! Jiwon moved to draw her sidearm, but 20 guards were already moving. They grabbed her arms and forced her to her knees. Your Majesty, please, Minho said quickly. I meant no insult. I only wished to... Silence. The Emperor descended the steps toward Minho. You come to my palace, you stand before my throne, and you dare to lecture me about wisdom? You dare to suggest the Empire should change its ways to accommodate you? He gestured to his guards. Take him. Hands like iron vices grabbed Minho's arms. He struggled instinctively, but the Draxian guards were far stronger than any human. Let the record show, the Emperor proclaimed to the assembled court, that the species called humanity sent an envoy who insulted the Emperor and defied the Empire. Let this be a lesson to all who would question Draxian supremacy. You can't do this, Jiwon shouted, still struggling against the guards holding her. He came under diplomatic protection. There are laws. Imperial law is the only law that matters here, Chancellor Krevthon said smoothly, and imperial law is the Emperor's will. They forced Minho to his knees. He looked up at the Emperor, seeing no mercy in those ancient eyes. In that moment, Minho understood that he had failed. Not because he had said the wrong words or chosen the wrong approach, but because no words or approach could have succeeded. The Draxian Empire did not want partners. It wanted subjects. It wanted the galaxy to kneel. And Minho had refused to kneel. For all humanity, Minho said quietly, I die free. The guard's blade fell. Jiwon screamed, a sound of pure anguish that echoed through the throne room. The nobles watched with cold satisfaction as the humans were dragged away, as Minho's body was unceremoniously removed from the sacred throne room. Take the survivors back to their ship, the Emperor commanded. Send them home with a message. Humanity has 1 year to accept imperial rule. If they refuse, we will come for them, and we will show them what happens to insects who forget their place. That night, back aboard the Prometheus, Captain Hyun held Jiwon as she wept. The ship fled Draxian space, carrying Minho's body home in a flag-draped coffin, and carrying something else. The recording Jiwon had made with her hidden camera, showing everything that had happened in the throne room. Showing an unarmed diplomat murdered for the crime of maintaining his dignity. Humanity would see what had been done, and humanity would respond. The Prometheus returned to Earth orbit on a gray morning. No celebration awaited them, only the somber silence of a world that had already heard the news through faster-than-light communications. Minho was dead, murdered by an alien emperor who saw humanity as nothing more than insects to be crushed. Secretary General Daeho stood in the reception bay of the orbital station as Minho's coffin was carried off the ship. He was a hard man who had commanded armies before entering politics, but even his weathered face showed grief. Behind him, representatives from every nation on Earth waited in silence. Jiwon walked behind the coffin, her face pale and empty of tears. She had cried them all during the journey home. I'm sorry, Daeho said quietly as she passed. I'm so very sorry. Jiwon stopped and turned to face him. Don't be sorry. Be angry. She pulled a data chip from her pocket and held it out. This is everything that happened. The whole galaxy needs to see it. Within hours, the recording spread across Earth's networks. Billions of people watched Minho stand before the alien emperor. watched him speak for humanity with dignity and courage, watched him refuse to accept slavery for his species. And they watched him die for that refusal. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Protests erupted in every major city. People demanded action, demanded justice, demanded that humanity show these aliens what it meant to murder one of their own. The anger transcended every boundary of nation, religion, or politics. For the first time in history, humanity spoke with a truly unified voice, and that voice demanded war. The United Earth Council convened an emergency session in Geneva. Secretary General Deho sat at the head of the massive circular table, looking at the faces of representatives from every government on Earth and its colonies. The chamber was built to hold 500 people, and every seat was filled. "We are here," Deho began, "to decide humanity's response to an act of unprecedented barbarism. An unarmed diplomat sent under a flag of peace was executed for refusing to accept slavery. The Draxian Empire has given us 1 year to submit to their rule or face extinction." "We should submit," said the representative from New Shanghai Colony. He was an old man who had lived through Earth's last great war. "I've seen the intelligence reports. The Draxian Empire controls 400 worlds. Their military is thousands of times larger than ours. If we fight, we die. If we submit, we die anyway," Admiral Sujin replied sharply. She stood at her position near the display screens, her uniform crisp and perfect. "Perhaps not physically, but in every way that matters. We become slaves. Our children become slaves. Every generation of humanity forever bows to alien masters who murdered our envoy for daring to stand upright." "There must be some middle path," another representative suggested. "Perhaps limited autonomy. A confederation where we maintain some independence while acknowledging their superior position." "You mean exactly what Minho tried to negotiate?" Director Kyungmi's voice cut through the chamber like ice. As head of Earth Intelligence Service, she commanded respect through fear and competence in equal measure. "They killed him for suggesting such a thing." "The Draxians don't negotiate. They conquer. There is no middle path because they refuse to allow one." The debate raged for hours. Some argued for submission and survival. Others demanded immediate military action. Still others proposed attempting to contact other alien civilizations for support, fleeing to distant colonies beyond Draxian reach, or building defenses and hoping the Empire would lose interest in one small world. Finally, Deho called for silence. "Chiwan is here." She was there. She saw what happened. "I think we should hear her testimony directly." Jiwan walked to the center of the chamber. She looked small and young among all these powerful people, but when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of absolute conviction. "I watched Minho die," she began. "I watched him stand before an emperor and refuse to accept slavery for humanity. He knew what would happen. We all did. The Draxians made their contempt clear from the moment we arrived. But Minho believed, he truly believed, that maintaining our dignity mattered more than anything else." She paused, gathering herself. "The Draxian Empire murdered an unarmed diplomat under a flag of truce. This is the most sacred violation in any civilized society. They did it to send a message that we are nothing, that our lives, our freedom, our right to exist as a free people means nothing to them." Her voice grew stronger. "If we submit now, we confirm that message. We tell them they were right about us. We tell every species in this galaxy that humanity can be pushed, can be murdered, can be terrified into surrender. We doom every future generation to slavery because we were too afraid to stand up for ourselves. And if we fight and lose?" someone asked. "We doom those same generations to extinction." "Maybe," Jiwan acknowledged. "But they'll die free. They'll die knowing their ancestors fought rather than knelt. And maybe, just maybe, we don't lose. Maybe we surprise them. Because the one thing I learned about the Draxians is this: they're arrogant. They haven't fought a real war in centuries. They've forgotten what it means to face an enemy that refuses to surrender." Admiral Sujin stepped forward, activating the large display screens. "If the Council wishes it, I have a military assessment." At Deho's nod, she continued. "The Draxian Empire is vast and powerful, but they're complacent. Their military doctrine hasn't evolved in thousands of years because they haven't needed it to evolve. They win through overwhelming force and technological superiority." She pulled up tactical displays. "We can't match their force, but we don't need to. We need to make conquering Earth so costly, so painful, that they decide we're not worth the trouble. Hit and run tactics. Asymmetric warfare. Make every system they take bleed them. And we have advantages they don't expect. What advantages? Someone scoffed. They have weapons we can barely comprehend. They have weapons they built 10,000 years ago and never improved, Sujin countered. We've been advancing our technology exponentially for the past century. We're innovative, adaptive, and desperate. They're complacent, rigid, and assume they've already won. Director Kyungmi added her own information. My agents have been gathering intelligence in Draxian space for 3 years. The Empire isn't as stable as they want everyone to believe. They rule hundreds of species through fear and military occupation. Many of those species hate their Draxian overlords but have no hope of freedom. If someone proved the Empire could bleed, could be hurt, those subjugated species might rise up. You want to start a galactic rebellion? The new Shanghai representative asked in disbelief. I want to give oppressed peoples hope, Kyungmi replied coldly. Hope is the most powerful weapon in existence. The Draxians know this. That's why they murdered Minho so publicly. They wanted to kill our hope before it could spread. Daeho let the discussion continue for another hour, but he could feel the mood shifting. Fear remained, but it was being joined by something else. Anger, determination, pride. The same qualities that had driven humanity to conquer its own world and reach for the stars. Finally, he called for a vote. The question before us is simple. Do we submit to Draxian rule or do we demand justice for the murder of our envoy? The vote was not unanimous. 15% voted for submission, arguing it was the only way to ensure humanity's survival. But 85% voted for resistance. They would not bow. They would not accept slavery. They would not let Minho's murder go unanswered. When the results were announced, Daeho stood and faced the assembly. Then it is decided. Humanity will not submit to the Draxian Empire. We will demand that Emperor Thalvrak's force stand trial for the murder of Envoy Minho. If the Empire refuses, we will extract our own justice. How? Someone asked. How can we possibly bring an emperor to justice? Admiral Sujin smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. We capture him. We take him from his throne, bring him to Earth, and put him on trial before the entire galaxy. We show every species that watches that no one, not even an emperor, is above justice. The chamber erupted in shocked conversation. Capture the emperor? It sounded impossible, insane. It can be done, Sujin insisted. It will be difficult and dangerous. Many of us will die trying, but it can be done. And when we succeed, we send a message that echoes across the galaxy. Humanity does not accept murder. Humanity does not accept tyranny. Humanity will fight and we will win. Daeho addressed the assembly one final time. This will be the hardest thing humanity has ever attempted. Many of us will not live to see the outcome, but our children will, our grandchildren will. They'll grow up in a galaxy where humanity stood tall when it mattered most, where we chose dignity over survival, justice over safety. He paused, letting his words sink in. Prepare the fleet. Activate all military reserves. Begin Operation Reckoning. We're going to catch ourselves an emperor. The next day, Daeho appeared in a broadcast sent to every world in Draxian space, translated into every known language. His message was simple and direct. The Draxian Empire murdered our envoy. We demand Emperor Thalvrak's force stand trial for this crime. If he refuses, we will come for him ourselves. Justice will be done, one way or another. The Draxian response came within hours, mocking laughter and promises of humanity's extinction. But in dark corners of the Empire, on subjugated worlds and in secret resistance cells, Operation Reckoning began with fire. Admiral Sujin stood on the bridge of the Defiant, humanity's newest warship, watching the tactical display as human forces struck targets across the Draxian frontier. 12 simultaneous attacks on military outposts, supply depots, and communication arrays. Each strike team operated with one goal: hit hard and disappear before the Draxians could respond. Target destroyed, her tactical officer reported as another Draxian outpost vanished from the display. All teams reporting successful strikes. No losses, Sujin nodded with satisfaction. This was just the beginning. The Draxians expected a traditional war, fleets clashing in open space, territory being taken and held. They would get something very different. Meanwhile, in the secret research facility beneath Earth's largest military base, Yuri worked on technology that would change everything. She was young, barely 30, but her mind operated at a level that made older scientists shake their heads in amazement. Before her on the workbench sat humanity's greatest advantage, a cloaking device that bent light and sensor waves around an object, making it effectively invisible. "Run the test again," she told her assistant, activating the device. The test drone on the platform shimmered and disappeared. Every sensor in the room reported empty space where the drone should be. "How long will it hold?" Admiral Sujin had arrived without Yuri noticing, studying the invisible drone with intense interest. 48 hours with current power cells," Yuri replied. "Enough for an infiltration team to reach the capital, complete their mission and escape." She deactivated the device and the drone reappeared. The Draxians have never seen anything like this. Their sensors aren't designed to detect it because they've never needed to be. "Perfect." Sujin smiled grimly. "Because we're about to attempt the most insane military operation in human history." In orbit around Mars, Commander Taewon trained with his team. The Shadow Corps represented humanity's best soldiers, men and women who had volunteered for a mission that would either change galactic history or get them all killed. Probably both. Taewon himself was a veteran of Earth's Special Forces with operations on 4 different worlds. He was calm, precise, and absolutely fearless when necessary. His team consisted of 20 operatives, each a specialist in different skills: infiltration, combat, alien languages, technology, and tactics. "Listen up," Taewon addressed his team as they stood in the briefing room. "Our mission is simple to explain and nearly impossible to execute. We're going to Valtros Prime. We're going to infiltrate the Imperial Palace, and we're going to capture Emperor Thalvrax IV. He let that sink in before continuing. "We'll be using Yuri's cloaking technology to avoid detection. Once on the ground, we'll have help from local resistance groups, subjugated species who hate the Draxians as much as we do. But make no mistake, this is a one-way trip until we succeed. If we're discovered before reaching the Emperor, we die. If we fail to capture him, we die. If we're caught trying to escape, we die. So no pressure," one of his team members joked, though her voice was tight with tension. "No pressure at all," Taewon agreed with a slight smile. "But if we succeed, we strike a blow that will echo for 1,000 years. We show the galaxy that humanity keeps its promises. We told them we'd bring the Emperor to justice. Now we do it." Ji-won stood at the back of the room wearing the black uniform of the Shadow Corps. She had begged to join the mission, and Taewon had initially refused, but she was trained, capable, and she deserved to be there when they captured the being who had murdered Minho. Finally, he had relented. "When do we leave?" someone asked. 48 hours, Taewon replied. "That gives you time to say goodbye to anyone you need to. After that, we won't exist officially. If we fail, Earth will deny we were ever there." As the team dispersed to make their preparations, Admiral Sujin pulled Taewon aside. "I want you to understand something. This mission is critical, but it's not the whole plan. While you're hunting the Emperor, I'll be leading the fleet in a series of engagements designed to draw Draxian forces away from the capital. We're going to make them angry, make them commit their military to hunting us down, and leave Valtros Prime as lightly defended as possible." "How many ships will you lose doing that?" Taewon asked quietly. "Enough." Sujin's face was hard. "But every ship we lose, every life we sacrifice, buys you more time to complete the mission. Don't waste those lives, Commander. Bring me an Emperor." 2 days later, the Shadow Corps departed Earth aboard a modified stealth ship. Using Yuri's cloaking technology, they slipped past Draxian patrols and entered the heart of the Empire. The journey took weeks, moving carefully through space controlled by the enemy, always aware that one sensor malfunction could mean discovery and death. During the journey, Taewon studied everything known about the Imperial Palace: floor plans stolen by spies, guard rotation schedules, the Emperor's daily routine, security protocols. He memorized every detail until he could walk the palace hallways in his dreams. Ji-won spent the journey in the ship's small gym, training until her body ached. Physical pain helped distract from the memories that haunted her. Minho's face, his last words, the sound of the blade falling. "You're going to hurt yourself," Taewon said, finding her there late one night. "You need rest." "I need to be ready," Ji-won replied, not stopping her exercises. "When we find him, when we capture that monster, I need to look him in the eyes and tell him that Minho's death meant something. That he died to wake humanity up. That his murder started a chain of events that brought down an empire." "We haven't brought it down yet," Taewon cautioned. "We will." Ji-won's voice held absolute certainty. Because we have something they don't. What's that? We have everything to lose. They have everything and think it can never be taken away. That makes them weak and us dangerous. Finally, they reached Valtros Prime. From orbit, the capital world looked exactly as Jiwan remembered. Beautiful, enormous, and terrifying. But this time humanity wasn't arriving as supplicants. They were arriving as hunters. Cloaking field at maximum, their pilot reported. Were invisible to their sensors. Beginning descent. They landed in a warehouse district controlled by the Korvathi, a subjugated species that had been under Draxian rule for 3 centuries. Director Kyungmi's agents had made contact with their resistance cell months ago. The Korvathi leader was named Threll. He was smaller than the Draxians, covered in gray fur with large ears that twitched constantly. When Taewon and his team emerged from their ship, Threll approached cautiously. "You're the humans," he said in broken but understandable English. "The ones who defied the Empire." "We are," Taewon confirmed. "And you're the ones who've been fighting them in secret for generations. We have a common enemy." "What you plan is impossible," Threll said, but there was hope in his eyes. "The palace is the most secure location in the Empire. Guards everywhere, sensors, security fields. No one has breached it in 1,000 years. "Then we're overdue," Taewon replied. "Can you get us inside?" Over the next week, with Korvathi help, the Shadow Corps infiltrated the capital city. They moved in small groups, wearing clothing that made them blend in with the crowds. Jiwan discovered that most citizens of the Empire paid little attention to what they considered lesser species. It made moving unnoticed surprisingly easy. They gathered intelligence, scouted routes, and prepared for the final assault. Yuri's cloaking devices worked perfectly. The Draxian sensors, designed to detect known threats, never noticed them at all. Then Admiral Sujin launched her diversionary attacks. Human warships struck Draxian military installations across 6 systems simultaneously. It was a coordinated assault that drew immediate response. The Emperor himself ordered the Imperial fleet to hunt down and destroy the human vessels that dared to attack his empire. With the fleet gone, and the Emperor's attention focused on the military threat, Valtros Prime's defenses were reduced. Not eliminated, the palace still held thousands of guards, but reduced enough to give Shadow Corps a chance. "It's time," Taewon told his team as they gathered in a tunnel beneath the palace. Korvathi resistance fighters had spent centuries mapping these passages, waiting for the day they might be useful. They moved through the darkness, 20 human soldiers and a dozen Korvathi guides. Yuri's devices kept them hidden from sensors. Silence and stealth kept them hidden from guards. Step by step, they penetrated deeper into the palace. Twice they encountered guards and had to eliminate them quietly. Jiwan moved like a shadow, her training and rage combining into lethal efficiency. The Draxians never saw them coming. Finally, they reached the Emperor's private quarters. According to intelligence, he would be there now reviewing reports of the human attacks. 3 guards outside, Taewon whispered, seeing them through his scope. "We take them together on my mark." Silent and fast, they moved. 3 suppressed shots perfectly timed. The guards fell without a sound. The door to the Emperor's chamber was locked and shielded. Yuri stepped forward with a device that would bypass the security system. It took 3 precious minutes while the team watched the corridor nervously. Finally, the lock clicked open. They burst into the room, weapons ready. Emperor Thalvrax IV sat at a desk reviewing holographic reports. He looked up in shock as armed humans flooded into his private sanctuary. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Emperor Thalvrax IV, ruler of the Draxian Empire for over 2 centuries, had been captured by human forces and taken to Earth. Species that had lived under Draxian rule for generations watched in stunned disbelief. The impossible had happened. The Draxian Empire fractured immediately. With the Emperor gone, various factions within the government fought for control. Some demanded his immediate rescue at any cost. Others saw opportunity in his absence and began positioning themselves for power. The carefully maintained illusion of Draxian invincibility shattered in a single moment. On Earth, Emperor Thalvrax sat in a secure holding facility designed specifically for him. The room was comfortable but impossible to escape. Guards watched him constantly. He was given food, water, medical care, everything except his freedom and his dignity. Secretary General Deho visited him the day after his arrival. "Do you know what you've done?" the Emperor demanded. Despite his captivity, He tried to maintain his imperial bearing. "The Empire will destroy your world. Every human will die screaming for this insult." "Perhaps," Deho replied calmly. "Or perhaps the Empire will collapse without you to hold it together. My intelligence reports suggest your government is already tearing itself apart, fighting over who gets to replace you." The Emperor's face showed the truth of those words. He knew his own government, knew the ambitious generals and scheming politicians who had waited for any sign of weakness. "You will stand trial," Deho continued. "You will answer for the murder of Envoy Minho before the entire galaxy. And you will face justice." "I am justice," Thalavrax roared. "I am the Emperor. I am the law." "Not anymore," Deho said quietly. "Now you're just a prisoner awaiting trial." Preparations for the trial took weeks. Chief Justice Kihun was appointed to preside, a respected judge known for his fairness and integrity. The International Tribunal was established with representatives from every human nation and colony. But more importantly, invitations were sent to every species in known space to send observers and witnesses. Many came, some out of curiosity, some out of hope, some simply to witness history. Species that had suffered under Draxian rule for centuries arrived to testify. They brought evidence of massacres, forced labor, cultural genocide, and 1,000 other crimes spanning millennia. The trial was broadcast live to every corner of the galaxy. Hundreds of billions of beings watched as Emperor Thalvrax IV was brought into the courtroom in restraints, forced to sit in the defendant's chair like a common criminal. Chief Justice Kihun opened the proceedings with simple words. "This tribunal is convened to hear evidence regarding the murder of Envoy Minho, representative of humanity, and to determine guilt and appropriate sentence. The defendant will be granted every protection of law and every opportunity to present a defense." The prosecution began with Jiwan's testimony. She stood in the witness stand and recounted everything that had happened in the throne room. Her voice was steady as she described Minho's speech, the Emperor's ultimatum, and the murder that followed. Then they played the recording. The entire galaxy watched as Minho stood before the Emperor, watched him speak for humanity with courage and dignity, watched him refuse to accept slavery, and they watched the Emperor order his execution. When the recording ended, the courtroom was silent. The prosecution called witness after witness. A Korvathi elder testified about the destruction of his people's civilization 3 centuries ago when they resisted Draxian rule. A Telvari scientist described forced labor camps where her species had toiled for generations. A Norban military officer spoke of watching his homeworld bombed into submission when they attempted independence. Each testimony painted a picture of an empire built on cruelty and maintained through fear. Each witness demonstrated that Minho's murder was not an isolated incident, but part of a pattern stretching back thousands of years. The Emperor refused to mount a defense. He sat in silence, occasionally muttering that the tribunal had no authority over him, that he was above all mortal laws. His own arrogance became his prosecutor's greatest ally. Finally, after weeks of testimony, Chief Justice Kihun asked the Emperor directly if he wished to speak in his own defense. Thalvrax stood, his aged body still commanding despite his chains. "You want me to defend myself? Very well. I am the Emperor of the Draxian Empire. For 10,000 years my people have brought order to chaos, civilization to barbarism. We conquered because we were superior. We ruled because we were worthy to rule." He looked directly at the cameras broadcasting his words across the galaxy. "That human envoy came to my throne and presumed to lecture me about wisdom. He dared suggest that the Empire should change to accommodate his primitive species. I ordered his death because he was insolent, because he forgot his place, because he needed to be reminded that the Empire does not negotiate with inferiors." The courtroom erupted in shocked murmurs. The Emperor had just confessed to everything. "You ask if I am guilty?" Thalvrax continued. "By your laws, perhaps I am, but I do not recognize your laws. I recognize only imperial law, which states that the Emperor's will is absolute. I ordered that human killed because I chose to. That is my right as Emperor." He sat back down, seemingly satisfied with his statement. He genuinely could not understand that his own words had sealed his fate. Chief Justice Kihun let the silence stretch for a long moment. Then he spoke to the tribunal judges. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" Admiral Sujin stood as the jury foreman. "We have, Your Honor. On the charge of murder of a diplomatic envoy, we find the defendant guilty. On the charges of crimes against sentient species, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of tyranny against subjugated peoples, we find the defendant guilty. The defendant will rise for sentencing, Ki-Hun said. The Emperor stood, and for the first time uncertainty showed on his face. Perhaps he finally understood that this was real, that his empire could not save him, that for the first time in his long life he would face consequences for his actions. Emperor Thalvrax IV, Ki-Hun said formally, you have been found guilty of murdering an unarmed diplomat under a flag of truce. This is the most sacred violation in civilized society. You have also been found guilty of countless crimes against sentient beings across the galaxy. The sentence is death to be carried out publicly, so that all may witness that no one, not even an emperor, is above justice. The courtroom erupted, some in celebration, some in shock, some in satisfaction that finally, after so long, a Draxian ruler would face punishment. The Draxian Empire's response was immediate. What remained of their fleet launched a desperate assault on Earth's solar system. They came with hundreds of ships, determined to rescue their emperor and punish humanity for their defiance. Admiral Sujin met them at the edge of the solar system with Earth's defense fleet, but she wasn't alone. The Korvathi had brought their ships. The Telvari had brought theirs. The Norban and a dozen other species that had suffered under Draxian rule for centuries arrived to fight alongside humanity. The Battle of Sol lasted 3 days. The Draxian fleet was larger, but the defenders fought with desperate courage. Every ship that broke through was destroyed before reaching Earth. Every Draxian assault wave crashed against the combined fleets of species that had finally found hope to resist. On the 3rd day, the Draxian fleet retreated. They had lost over 60% of their ships. The survivors fled back to the Empire's core territories, leaving Earth's system victorious. 2 days later, Emperor Thalvrax IV was led to the execution platform in Geneva. Representatives from 400 species attended in person. Trillions more watched via broadcast across the galaxy. Secretary General Deho addressed the assembled crowd. Today we execute Emperor Thalvrax IV not out of vengeance but out of justice. He murdered an innocent diplomat who sought only peace. He ruled over countless species through fear and cruelty. He believed himself above all law, answerable to no one. He paused, letting his words carry across the vast space. Today, we prove that no one is above justice. Today we prove that tyranny can be defeated. Today we prove that when free people stand together, they are stronger than any empire. The Emperor was given a chance for final words. He refused to speak. The execution was carried out exactly as Minho's had been, swiftly and publicly. When it was done, a new reality settled over the galaxy. The Draxian Empire still existed, but it would never be the same. The Emperor was dead. Subjugated species were rising up. The galactic order that had stood for 10,000 years was crumbling. That evening, Jiwan visited Minho's memorial. It stood in the center of Geneva, a simple monument with his name and a single line. He stood for humanity. We did it, she said quietly to the memorial, as if Minho could hear her. We brought him to justice. Your death meant something. It woke us up. It showed us that we could stand against tyranny and win. She stood there for a long time, remembering her friend, remembering his courage in that throne room. He had known he would die, but he had refused to kneel. That single act of defiance had changed everything. 3 months later, Secretary General Daiho addressed the United Earth Council one final time regarding the Draxian Empire. They have sent ambassadors requesting peace talks. The Empire is fracturing.